Hello and welcome to Getting Started with Microservices and PHP. I'm Brad Bonkoski and I will be guiding you through this course. Quickly about me, this is me. I architected many production-ready microservices and startup and established technology companies. I've worked in Silicon Valley and elsewhere. I've been using PHP since version 3, and I've been creating well-crafted code for over 15 years. I've been using PHP since version 3, and I've been creating well-crafted code for over 15 years. We'll start off in section 1, give us an overview of microservices and getting started. Here we're going to actually start looking into what microservices are. We're going to talk about theory, but we're also going to do some practice, and we're going to start setting up our toolbox. For this course, we're going to use Lumen. We're going to use Jenkins, we're going to use Docker, some AWS stuff, and then we're actually going to start developing our microservice. We're going to talk about some best practices in developing and creating an individual microservice that we can then use. And finally, we're going to do some validation of that microservice just to verify it does what we think it should do. In section 2, we're going to create our environment for developing and testing our microservice. So we're basically going to continue to build out our toolbox. We're going to set up Jenkins. We're going to start talking about integration versus spec-based versus unit testing. We're actually going to write and run some tests. And we're going to, at the end, we're going to create a deployable artifact. And we're actually going to build a nice Jenkins pipeline in order to do that. And in section 3, we're going to focus on, what's included in publishing or productionizing your microservice. So we're going to talk at a high level sometimes, but we're going to talk about load testing. We're going to talk about performance testing. We're going to talk about log aggregation, monitoring, and different deployment paradigms and how it's recommended to actually deploy this microservice into a production environment. Some quick course prerequisites or things that would be very handy for you guys to have at least somewhat familiarity with before we start is obviously PHP, Apache, which is the container that this course will run PHP in. If you want to use Nginx or something else, feel free. It just might alter some of the flow a little bit. Lumen is the framework that I'm going to use for this first microservice, but you can use if you're familiar with other modern frameworks, it should flow pretty well. And of course, Docker, any familiarity with Docker that you have will be helpful to come up to speed. I try to go over as much detail as I can to help out, but any familiarity there will be helpful. And then some quick goals. So out of section 1, the goal there is just understanding what a microservice is and what it isn't. We're actually going to create the project and document the RESTful endpoints. And actually, we're going to write code. There's going to be code in section 1 to actually create a couple endpoints for this microservice. In section 2, the exit goal will kind of be you'll have Jenkins set up. You'll be able to create tests and build a deployment pipeline that will actually take you all the way through from commit to running static code analysis to running tests to building a container to installing that container and running integration tests. So it actually goes through the entire pipeline. And in section 3, of course, discussions around productionizing your web service, including monitoring, logging, deploying, and of course, load and performance testing as well. So I hope you guys enjoy the course. Excited to get started.